so much, Melissa and Tash, for being our live podcast guests. And no pressure, we are among friends here. You probably didn't feel the pressure until I said the word, triggering word pressure, right? So, thank you, and this is going to be a special episode that we are recording in celebration of Women's History Month, along with a whole bunch of other things that we're doing and among friends that we are spending, so thank you. To start out with, why don't we have you introduce yourself and one fun fact. We'll start with Melissa.
Hi everyone, I'm Melissa Haapala. I am currently a director at Sterne Kessler. I've been with Sterne Kessler for about a year, and prior to that I was at the Patent Trial and Appeal Board for 10 years. The last few years I was a vice chief judge. I managed a division of about 80 judges. I had 6 lead judges, and each of those lead judges had 8 to 10 judges. And I was responsible, in addition to decisions, policy, actually I was responsible for leadership training. We had about 50 supervisors at PTAB, and we did a lot of leadership training, which I loved. Maybe not everybody else loved, but I loved doing it. I am the mother of 3 boys who are actually not boys anymore. They're 19, 21, and 24. A fun fact about me, I learned all my knowledge about basketball through them. 3rd grade, I was asked to go do the book. Referee came and told me how to do the book and said, oh, and by the way, when there's a jump ball, you need to change the arrow. And I said, what's a jump ball? And the ref walked away. But I was persistent, and in the end, I learned to do the varsity book and clock, one of only a very few people. My youngest graduated high school last year. The coach still calls me when the main person, can you come do the book, Mrs. Haapala? Yes, I will come do the book. So, things you learn from your kids. That's my fun fact.
Perfect. Tash, same question.
Thank you so much for having me, Ashley. My name is Tash Durkins. I spent the last 2 decades of my career working for the Federal Aviation Administration.
So you started at 8.
Yes, thank you. Had maybe a decade before that in private sector. At the FAA, I worked in operational support positions, supporting the air traffic controllers and the maintenance technicians and all the people who make sure you can fly from a technical perspective at the FAA. And I was also responsible for policy, aviation policy work. You would not believe how much policy is involved in just air traffic control, and strategy work for the aviation community. So I absolutely loved getting to do that work because it was very consequential. In addition to that, I became an author during my last 2 years at the FAA. I wrote a book called Fiercely Joyful. It's about living authentically and creating a life that you love. And my whole leadership brand is around authenticity and truth-telling. And what I found as I got higher and higher up the chain is that it wasn't a lack of competency or lack of intelligence that caused leadership issues. It was usually a lack of alignment between what people value and what they actually do. And so I became passionate and wanted to focus more on that full-time. So now I am a full-time strategic executive counsel. It's consulting work to help senior leaders that have enterprise accountability figure out how to tell the truth with compassion.
That's a very hard thing to do. Okay, next question I have is, we're gonna have 30 minutes, so it's at some point it's gonna get into rapid fire. That's why I have my clock here. Usually it's not a great thing to have. It's very non-respectful to have this, but I'm a timekeeper, so I need to make sure everything's on time. So, is there someone who significantly shaped your leadership journey, like either authors or professor or thought leaders? So I'm gonna go with Tash first.
So for me, yes, I had a manager years ago when I was still in private sector working in telecommunications. And he gave me my first opportunity to do a new program launch for a new phone, new cell phone. This is when they were flip phones, y'all. It's a long time ago. But I was so nervous, and it was my first meeting. Everybody's in the room, and we're going around doing introductions. And when it got to him, he was sitting right next to me. When it got to him, he said, "I'm Lance. I'm on Tash's team." was like, did my boss just say he's on my team? It made me feel so empowered. And he was that kind of leader that just empowered me in every way, even when he was giving critical feedback. And so I made it my desire to be able to treat people the same way. So I learned as much as I could from him and continued to grow my own leadership in a similar way.
Awesome response. Melissa?
That is great. I would first like to start with my mother. My mother unfortunately passed away a few years ago, but she was a great inspiration to me. Although we butted heads like mothers and daughters can do, she gave me the confidence from when I was young to pursue a career in engineering, which eventually led to a career in patent law, and always a good cheerleader for me, good support. For leadership, my first real job out of college, I was working as a software engineer in a group of very eclectic personalities. And my boss came to me and he said, I was the youngest one on the team, but he said, you really have a good ability to talk to everybody across the team. But he said, what you don't realize is people have different personalities and they, sometimes you can trample over them. I like to talk.
Who doesn't, right?
Yeah. So he gave me a book on Myers-Briggs and talking about the different personality types, and which I had never read, and but it was impactful in a couple ways. First, it made me think more conscientiously about different personality types and how I interact, and being respectful of people that maybe think through things differently, don't blurt out the first thing that comes in their head like I do too much, and I actually really value the people that don't do that because they can help bring me in. But it made me start out a career learning that we're not born perfect, right? We're not born great leaders, we're not born with all this knowledge. It started me thinking there's a lot of books that help us and help us grow and learn. And so I thank my boss, Benny, for that, teaching me that lesson too.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for both, to both. And next question that I have is that we get into two different themes, and then we go into rapid fire. One is leadership under pressure. I started the word pressure to begin with, so let me go ahead and hone into that. Tash, you've led in high-stakes environments. How did that responsibility shape the way you show up as a leader authentically, especially when there's no perfect answer? Go!
Okay. No pressure.
No pressure!
I think you and Melissa just said the key word there. There is no perfection. And getting comfortable with the fact that you will never have a perfect answer is what changed things for me. And recognizing that your job is to make the best choice in the moment. And so for me, that looks like separating urgency from panic, right? It's showing up in a way that's calm and steady. It also looks like being forthcoming enough to name the issue. Like, don't pretend it's not an issue. Say what it is, even when you're not sure how you can resolve it. And then thirdly, gather the input from the experts, because one of my great bosses used to say, I don't have a monopoly on good ideas, so talk to some more people. I love that saying. So talk to the people who are the experts, get their input, and then own the issue. Like, those are the three things. Separate the urgency. Everything is not urgent, by the way. Test that out, pressure test it to see if nothing breaks. If the urgent thing doesn't get done right away, it's not urgent. But separate urgency from panic, lean in on naming what's real, and thirdly, owning the decision.
But doesn't that require some self-awareness to
Yes.
know what is urgent versus panic? Because most of the people go into, like, I sometimes go into anxiety attack. Like, I was like, oh, this is happening. Like, for example, we have a tornado watch here, weather, flight delays and everything. So I am supposed to have a team member that actually was going to be here to cover. And I think that the moment of clarity came in. I was like, I don't know that it's really going to happen. Weather, delay, everything together. She was supposed to be coming in at 11:30 p.m. on Monday night in Chicago O'Hara. and then she would cover this for an event. We'll be running around like everywhere. And then Wednesday morning, I'm heading to the PTAT Bar Association, but 6:30 is her flight get back. That means that she had to be at the airport at 4:30. Now, am I exhausted? Absolutely. But I have to kind of like, she's a Gen Zer, so she's younger, very, very passionate about wanting to help, and also a bit of a people pleaser. So probably don't want to upset me and say something, say, hey, I don't think this makes sense for me to be here. And so I call her. As soon as I hear all the things with the bus, I was like, you need to take a look at the flight credit and delay, and I'm going to go ahead and give you the decision to make, I'm going to give you discretion to make the decision. If you decided that you do not want to come, it's completely acceptable. In fact, I would rather you not come, because I think that you're going to be ended up in the airport and missing the event. She's like, but who's going to help you? I said, isn't that my problem? And so once part of the thing is like, do I want to be selfish and no, you are going to come because I want to do whatever is needed, but I cannot be that selfish. So leaders, sometimes you just kind of have to think about like what's at stake here. So you're going to have Jesslyn over there, my mom, to help. So on that, it's like my mom got notification this morning at 7:30 when we were having breakfast. I said, I need a favor. What do you need? And then I was like, I need help. I don't think I can go get cake and do all these things and have life LinkedIn and do this, and I'll be completely zonked out by the end of the evening, but I can do it because that's who I am. So on that, I digress. Melissa, back to you. I gave you some time to relax. So change almost always brings resistance. How do you lead people through uncertainty without losing momentum?
Change is difficult. It's really difficult, and I think it can be, the first thing you have to ask, is it a change as a leader, or how do you feel about the change, and manage your own emotions about it. Maybe you're super excited, but then realize not everybody's going to be super excited, so you have to manage your excitement, and that's a good change because you maybe have a lot of energy and enthusiasm, and you just have to try to temper that down. There's the change that comes from on high or other outside circumstances that you can't control, and you have to lead through that, and you have to manage your own emotions first. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing, you have to realize all of us want to be heard. We want to be heard, we want to be respected. Letting people have that space, listen, you can let them know, be honest. Don't seek input if you're not really asking for it. That's the worst thing you can do. Like, if you have a change and the change decision's been made, and then you go and say, what do you think about this change, and it's done, that's not authentic, to Tasha's point. You have to, if you can, let people provide the input, but make sure that they're heard, regardless of the circumstances. You have to let people be heard and let them have a chance to grieve. Even if it's a good, positive change that maybe everybody will like eventually, there's still a grief. If it's something that is not as positive, there's a lot more grief. And so people need that, a little bit of space to have that be part of the process. It's a difficult thing. Communication is also my last point. You have to communicate when you're changing. You have to communicate well, both listening to what people are saying and then communicating your message very clearly.
Yes, I think the communication is so key, because many people, especially when we don't have the time, we assume. What does assume do? Yeah, I don't have to say that, just spell it out. So that's wonderful. Let's move on to the next topic, mentorship, trust, and culture. You think this is fast? Just wait until we get to rapid fire. So Melissa, I'm going to stay on you on this one. How do you balance guiding individuals one-on-one while maintaining the consistency and accountability at a large organization that demands it?
Yeah. Tasha got to some of this about being authentic, and that honesty, when you're honest, that's how you treat people with respect. When you're not honest, that's not treating people respectfully. So you have to have honest conversations with people, and it's difficult. It's very difficult. There are ways that you can go about these candid conversations in a respectful manner, but still give people the input that they need to hear. And their avoidance is not one of those ways.
Although I do that sometimes.
Yeah. Trying to go in really strict and just say it and not not recognizing the humanity. I don't think that's a good way to do it either. And there's different styles. There's different tools and techniques. I think you have to find the style that works for you. But I think that the key point is you want to be honest and authentic in conversations, and also you want to help coach. And I will tell you, I think this is a later question, but I'm going to answer it now. One of my biggest challenges is there's a difference between coaching and consulting. And the consultant gives you the answer, and a coach helps somebody work through the answer. And it's something as a leader that you want to try to be more of a coach as much as possible. Some situations you may have to direct or give the answer, but in general, when you're trying to help grow or mentor or build intergenerational leaders, it's the title of this podcast, you need to coach. And it's difficult. That's a difficult thing that also takes skill and learning and practice. So thinking through, if you're having these conversations, how do I, rather than giving this person the answer, how do I coach them to help them through the process?
It's wonderful. And I think one of the things that is really important too is that when you are leading other people, you have to start with yourself. I feel that if you don't know how to do self-stewardship and ask yourself those hard questions, it'll be incredibly difficult to lead other people because all eyes are on you. And sometimes it's like there are times that you have to basically, it's like the angel and the devil on the other side, and then just duke it out. And I just thought that was one of the most incredibly difficult things to accomplish, to be able to trust yourself with the decision that you make, and then share with your team or other stakeholders. And sometimes you'll be questions, other times fingers will be pointed at you, and you just kind of have to I got this, and you have to trust yourself that with the best decision. So thank you so much for leading to that. Tash, what actions build the most credibility and trust with your team when you were leading them? And what role does curiosity play in how you mentor? It's a really easy question.
The first thing I'd say is we all have to remember that credibility does not come from a title. It comes from how we show up, and how we show up consistently with integrity and with care and compassion for our team. And what you just talked about actually plays a big role at self-leadership and having some self-awareness about how it is you're showing up. And let me just say, I think as in that vein, it's our responsibility as leaders, and to be clear, everyone's a leader. Leader is not about being a manager. Everyone's a leader. And as a leader, we are responsible for also being open to feedback from one another about how we're showing up and how people are experiencing us. And so when it comes to building that trust quickly, first thing is honesty. And that is uncomfortable for many of us. And when I'm talking about, I'm not talking about, telling these truths. I'm talking about honesty when it comes to vulnerability. Meaning, I don't have the answer, Ashley. I know you came to me for an answer. I don't have it right now. Let's sit down and figure it out together. But being comfortable, being honest enough to say what you don't know is one of the keys. The second is alignment between what you say and what you do. If you say that you value work-life balance, but you're always giving kudos and shout-outs to the person who's working 16-hour days, even though they're doing really hard work and they're doing a ton, your team hears, okay, I got to work 16-hour days to be able to, do good work. And then the last piece that you mentioned is curiosity. What role does that play for me, it became asking questions, never assuming, as you said, because every time I assumed, almost every time I was wrong. You know, I thought somebody, even if it was assuming that I communicated clearly, no. A lot of times I did not. I had to ask the questions to figure out, did I or not? And to understand what the team's challenges were rather than just assume. Curiosity became kind of the foundation of my communication with my team. And lastly, to Melissa's point, when folks are, sometimes folks just need the direction. They can't handle your line of curiosity. And sometimes you have to adjust as a leader. As uncomfortable as it may feel, if the thing has to get done, you may have to adjust your leadership style in various moments to be able to meet the need.
Wonderful response there. And I think one of the things that I was thinking is that also in how you actually communicate. Mm-hmm. Like, don't use, why did you do this? This is just very defensive. It immediately causes people to be defensive. And then you could pose like, oh, how did you come to that conclusion? And just kind of understand that sometimes, you know, especially this age, you have no control over anything. Almost, that's how I feel. So you just do the best you can and let people know that, you know, if they actually communicate with you about the issue, make it safe. I think safety is so important so that people can actually share with you, because otherwise, because I work with an entirely remote team. Jessalyn happens to be living close to me, so she sometimes gets pretty rough. I was like, hey, can you meet at the boba shop? And then, but we used to have like boba get together and things like that. So sometimes it's like I always tell my team that it is okay for you to say no to me, but you need to communicate clearly to me so that I can actually, you know, make alternative plans and making sure that, because I got a job to do and I have clients to report to, this is not my bread and butter, and you know, I need to make sure that I actually am responsible. So I'm okay if you say no, because I'm moving on to the next person, and it's really good practice for you to stop people pleasing and set your boundaries. So, and sometimes they actually set better boundaries than I do, so I'm learning that. All right, rapid fire questions. What's one leadership lesson you learned the hard way and are most proud of? Tash.
I learned really the hard way that I'm not supposed to have all the answers, and answering all the questions from my team or telling them what to do all the time was harming their ability to grow and impeding me from getting the best solutions, because again, I don't have a monopoly on good ideas. So that was it for me.
It must be a very hard moment.
It was.
Melissa, do you want to say a question?
You can never over communicate enough. You know, you think you said something, and maybe you did say something. Maybe you do have the email evidence. Yes, I did tell you this. It was months ago, and it's in my email. I can prove it to you. But that's not enough. That really, you do need to keep communicating. And communication's hard. I'm not going to say I know the answers for communicating perfectly, but I learned that you can never communicate enough. Over communicate. You really need to do so much more than you think you need to do.
It's awesome. I recently in an interview, actually on Monday, because today's only Tuesday. So I interviewed a Superior Court judge, and then one of the things that she mentioned was really cool is that, you know, praise in public and criticize in private. Mm-hmm. How do you both feel about that?
I think that it's generally a good philosophy. So if you allow bad behavior to continue to happen, and you don't say something about it where people can hear, sometimes you need to do that. Yeah. I think generally I agree with that, but I do think there are times where you might need to criticize in public. And I also think there are people that don't like to be publicly praised either. So you may need to adjust based on their preferences. Some people don't want to be called out, even if it's in a good way. So, but generally I think I agree with that.
So it goes to legal, it depends.
It depends.
What's the answer for that? It depends. How do you help others develop a healthy relationship with failure or falling? Let's start with Melissa.
You know, if you don't fail, sometimes you're not pushing the boundaries, right? We know that, but it doesn't make failure easier. So I think there's one of my favorite sayings is, in the valleys you grow. You know, it's great to be on the mountain and have everything work perfectly, and we love being there, but really where we learn is we learn the most from our failures, where things don't go quite as well. And I think what you need to what I try to do is help people manage the level of their failure, like boundary, you put some boundaries, so hopefully it's not catastrophic. But that you want people to be able to pushing boundaries, trying new ideas. I also like, I learned something about a soft no. You know, people come to you with an idea.
I like that.
And instead of saying, you know, no and shutting it down completely, you come back and say, you know, I don't think this is quite ready, or you think this through more. And my favorite example of the soft no was the person who came up with the idea to put a shuttle on top of a jet. You know, if you think about NASA, you know, that we're going to transport a space shuttle on top of a jet. Can you imagine the culture that took for somebody to come to the manager and say, I want to do this? And it's crazy, right? But they had that culture of saying a soft no rather than shutting it down, so more creativity and other ideas could come out.
Perfect. I'm going to go to the last one because we only got 2 minutes left. What's one thing you want the audience to walk away with tonight, Tash?
I would say the importance of authenticity as leaders, and you know, in our personal lives and our professional lives, because when we show up authentically, fully authentically, that is when we have the best of ourselves to give, and that's when the world gets the best of us, period. And there may be so many things that are for you to do in this world that the world never sees if you're over here concerned about pleasing others and showing up in a way that makes others happy versus the way that is aligned with who you truly are. So whatever it takes, and I know it takes time and it's a lot easier said than done, and let me be clear, authenticity should come with discernment. That's a whole other conversation, but with discernment, right? So, but you know in your soul, right, when it's too far and when it's okay. So make those judgments, but be as authentic as you can, because that is where you get to a true path for success and joy.
Melissa?
That everybody in this room has the capacity to be a great leader, that we are all leaders. The great leaders learn, they seek honest input from their friends and their network, and everyone has that capacity. And how you show up and how you lead in whatever capacity you have, it matters. It makes a difference. You know, the Maya Angelou quote: "People won't remember." Paraphrasing, they won't remember what you did, but they will remember how you made them feel.
That's wonderful. We're at 6:15. I was the timekeeper at trial.
It's a better place since you came along.